saying that's foolproof. You know, I got a buddy who reads a hardwood lumber report every month. He's all breathless about it. And I'm kind of like, well, that's only a little bit correlated. You know, lumber futures in Chicago are different from what me and you can expect down here. The only leverage me and you have about the marketplace is if the price don't look real good, I'm just going to sit on it for a little while. Which that's kind of what I was wanting to get to here, is this is how your timber value accrues with time. Now the first thing you're going to notice is I don't declare how long that is. 40 years if you're down in pines in Alabama or something. Most of us that grow wood here, number one quality material usually takes about 80 years for that log to develop. The other thing you didn't notice necessarily on the Paulownia thing, that's a long story, but you can grow wood too fast. Cherry in Tennessee has gummosis, the rings are too wide. You're not going to get big money for cherry in Tennessee like you would in Pennsylvania. The trees grow much slower there. So the rings per inch. So if I'm sawing wood in Italy, or for the market in Italy or some other place, they may need a number of rings per inch. So when I send my timber buyers out there in the woods, I tell them we can't have real quick grown trees. So we like the trees to be tight. That means a bunch of trees per acre. Forces it up, prunes those lower limbs off. You see how the silviculture, the way we manage that, influences how that jacket gets built around that log. But as a businessman, I'm looking at this and I'm going, yes, it's not merchantable here, but I can sell it if I recognize when I walk out on a cut-over stand. I've got customers that want me to help them buy timberland in Tennessee. Some of the cheapest timberland in Tennessee has been cut over. But if I can walk through there, and I'm a wildlifer too, so when I hear people say, yeah, we got that place cleaned up, we're ready to plant something now, and I'm going, what in that, you know, you probably had a forest that was 10 years old once you just cleared up. I was talking to these folks up here. Your capacity to recognize this material before it turns into a big tree is really important. Because if you got a little white oak tree that's this tall, I can keep the canopy open until it gets on up there, and then it's ready. It's my tree. I didn't have to suffer paying $15 down there at Walmart or somewhere to plant it and try to keep the deer off of it. And you know, it just volunteered to be here, but I was able to recognize it when it was little. Everybody see how that goes? That's how we manage woods. So that's where I do my culling, frankly, is while I'm growing. You get a little bump here if you had a pulpwood market. We could take the smaller trees out and develop the bigger trees on. They'd have more room to grow. You grow on up here, it gets merchantable for saw timber. You see how at each node your value's going up. So here's the deal. The first Tennessee forester I ever met worked for a bank in Georgia. He was a trust forester for a big old bank in Macon, Georgia. And they had all these farms and all this timberland had been put in trust, and his job was to maximize the value right here. Now we make our students take calculus and they hate it, and you know, but if I'm a businessman, I'm looking for peeking this out. I want to make sure I get the most value for the smallest amount of time. Remember I told you about that man that cussed me like a dog because the trees weren't paying the taxes? It's because he was dying in here. There's a lot of us, and probably folks sitting in the room right here. These woods here in Smith County, Macon County, this neighborhood, we clear-cut Tennessee in the 20s and 30s to build the country. How old would those stands be right now? 80, 90, 100. Okay. Contrary to what your fourth grade teacher told you, trees don't live forever. Okay? And what happens is when I get a whole bunch of 90-year-old trees trying to exist on that little thin shallow soil, depending on where your dirt is, somebody's got to go. So it would be a disease or it could be a bug, but it's just a syndrome called old age. So if you're planning to get value out of your timber and you're starting to notice in these drier years or in some of these other years, you're starting to see a lot of mortality, the woods are just thinning themselves naturally, and they will. So I get people all the time going, well, I sure do hate to cut the timber. And I said, well, just get used to looking at it right. That's fine. You know, I'm a nature boy. I can go with that. You know, the lizards and the fungi and stuff, they'll rot that log on down and build soil. And, oh, man, I can't waste that wood. And I'm like, yeah, I get, anyway, I won't go there. But you can kind of see, so if you want value out of your trees, you should plan on this. But here's the other thing is let's say I check out right here, I die, okay? My kids inherit this. Does everybody know what stepped up basis is? Stepped up basis is the value of those trees right there becomes my kids' value of that timber when they inherit it. So it was no very low value for me. They step up the basis. Okay? They grow the trees to here. They cash them out. Take this basis from here and net that out. That's the way capital gains work. Long-term capital gains, you can net out your basis. So what I'm doing in an 80-year period as a family, we're managing on a plan. We step up our basis at each generation, and it's automatically long-term capital gain here. So at each point, so what I'm telling you is we don't manage cash flow in this business. How much timberland would I need to make a living? A lot. Okay? If you're planning to make $30,000 or $40,000 a year on timber enterprise, you better own a lot of timber. Okay? And you may not want to own it here. You may want to own it in Brazil or the coast of Georgia or, somewhere where there's a little bit more activity in the timber market. But I'm looking at rate of return, 4% a year, 6% a year. Here's the other thing, and I often parry with my friends in agriculture. What was my cost? Here's the income and here's the cost. Look here, for 30, 40, 35 years, I ain't got no vet bills. I didn't have to buy a trailer to haul the cattle to the market. I didn't have to feed them when the hay went down. See where I'm going with this? So these foresters, they're just lazy. Well, yeah, pretty much. But I ain't having to put a lot of money into this. You kind of see how this goes. So a lot of times it's always real stressful. If you've got to have cash flow, timber's not for you. But if you got a good job somewhere else and you can grow high quality wood, even though it's not cash, it's still in your portfolio. You see kind of how that goes? So if I walk out here in your woods and you've got some real nice yellow poplar growing and white oak, red oak growing, you're good. If you know your Paul Bunyan standing stock table and can hit a value, you can take your grandkids out every Christmas, measure the trees. Here, Johnny, these trees are growing, and put the discount formula to it. They're growing at 3 or 4%, maybe 6 or 8, depending on what prices are doing, where they're at in there. So you kind of see, and I mean, I'm just selling snake oil now, but that's kind of how I look at it. I can't apologize because we can't cash it every year, but I can look at it and go, but it's making money every year. It's accruing value, and that's kind of how how I look at it, and would encourage you to look at it in a similar fashion. But I'm too full of myself now. Y'all ask some questions and bust this balloon here. Any issues? Yes, sir.
The effect of the insect disease on the ash trees had any bearing on the market?
I couldn't answer that, but I'm sure that it has. Usually it depresses it. There's just a glut of wood out there. So typically in my experience, I've been a pine person. Whenever we get a southern pine beetle epidemic, it kills all the pine trees. You can't give them away. So I don't know whether that same thing happened with ash or not. I've been encouraging people, if you have ash on your property and it's not been impacted by the bug, you need to move on it. I can't say what the price is going to be. It's probably going to be, and again, it could potentially be about what it was without the bug. But I know as a timber buyer, if I think you've got bug in it, I may bust you a few dollars just because it might be degraded in some fashion. If the bug's in there, that coloration and then the other problem that I've run into with ash is the scale, the number of board feet in the log. Because a lot of times at the mill, I'm cutting a big old wide slab just to make sure I'm getting that inner core down and it's not got bugs in it when I put it in the container. Because Europeans don't want them bugs, the Asians don't want them bugs. You know, they're pretty tight on the phytosanitation certificates, especially if it's leaving the country. We're anticipating probably this summer we will open the state up. The insect has now moved west of the Tennessee River into West Tennessee, and the state forester was saying as soon as it crosses into West Tennessee, we're not going to have a quarantine. You can move wood freely in Tennessee, so that'll help. I think, Mr. Clark, didn't you have to open a wood yard somewhere where they arbitrarily put one county could move wood and another? I think you stepped up and put a yard there.
They finally quarantined the whole place, but
yeah.
To his point though, when they quarantined all this, I'd say now the price is probably 20% higher.
Wow.
But that's basically why they say that is probably the quantity from the north, which is where the insect came from, quantity in that area is lesser. So
That
maybe we benefited from that, but they say it's going to kill all of our ash trees.
yeah, it's not looking good. I'm a kind of an amateur geneticist. If y'all want to take one of these and pass them around, I studied on that a little bit, and yeah, there's very little to no resistance right now. I do appreciate what Mr. Clark said. Since the epidemic came from the north, the supply from up north has been down, so they're starting to look to the south for wood, which probably explains that price. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Here goes to Asia.
Yeah, yeah. But all of that matters. I mean, that's a big deal in terms of. I'm handing this out here on best management practices. Got some other things I'm going to leave here at the door. One of the things that I certainly would encourage everybody to take a look at is this timber sale contract. Now this makes a few people nervous. We're signing contracts all the time though, so don't get too nervous about it. You can read through that. A bill of sale is required in Tennessee by code. This best management practices for selling timber. Has everybody got this practices for selling timber yet? Let's look at the table of contents here real quick. This is a good one. I've got another one I'm going to leave on the table over here. Do some planning. Do some planning. A lot of what I tell folks is when they call and they're interested in selling trees, I say, which trees are you willing to sell? Does everybody catch that? Which trees are you willing to sell? Does everybody understand when I hold this up a roll of flagging? You just get a roll of ribbon that you could put around your trees. Anytime I get somebody who gets a hot flash, they're wanting to sell timber, and I mean that with all due respect, I tell them, I say, get a roll of ribbon, and go out there, and every tree you're willing to part with, put ribbon around it. Every tree you're willing to part with, put ribbon around it. And then the next few days, get used to looking at that. And I go, what is that? And I'm like, well, you look at that ribbon, that tree's going to be gone. You want to get your mind right about that? Now, if you don't live there, that's fine. You're not going to see it every day anyway. And then what happens is I'm famous among all the loggers. They come in after I mark the timber, and they go, well, yeah, we can tell Larry marked this. And they go, well, how? He marked all the wrong trees. I said, what do you mean he marked all the wrong trees? He said, no, I don't want any of these that he marked because I'm usually weeding my forest, okay? I'm going to keep the best trees because they're going to grow the best, and I'm going to get on up, I'm going to skeet this on up a little bit. Okay, so I'm culling my hackberry, my, whatever is a weed in the neighborhood. And then the fellow that comes to buy the wood, he goes, well, I can't make any money cutting all this mess. So then you start pairing and go, okay, well, I could give up this one, and he's making money, and here's the deal. What I want y'all to get used to, and this is adversarial at some point because it's market. I wanted more dollars, and he's going to part dollars. My wife called. Boy, you sure are frugal. My wife will pop up and say he's cheap. He ain't frugal. So if I'm buying your wood, I'm not going to give you any more than I have to get it. You see kind of how that goes? So you've got to be willing to look and do some planning. Don't cut yourself out of business. The thing I'm trying to get to is it ain't no sin if the logger makes money. Because if he or she's not making money, are they going to be there the next time you're ready to cut timber? Probably not. So your wood's worthless without somebody to buy it. So if a man or a woman is negotiating with me and she says, well, I'd like to do business with you, Larry, but I just can't make any money here. It's not personal. They're not dissing you. They're just telling you. And then you can ask them why, and you can say, well, because I need to cut all your number one red oaks. Okay? And I go, well, I don't think they're ripe yet. And then when they leave, I'm sitting here going, what if that dang thing dies this summer? So you see, it's a risky business. We don't have bug insurance for forestry. That you can buy insurance for forest, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend, depending on the create the contract. I would encourage everybody to look at this contract tonight if you're having any trouble sleeping. I would say if you want to open that contract, and let's look at it real quickly. I do use this contract in the master logger program, because a lot of these things protect the logger. If a man or a woman's in the logging business, timber buying business, they may have these pre-printed on a pad. I know when I was dealing in South Georgia, there was a pad of these just pre-printed on the dashboard. I will say this: look down here all the way through paragraph 18. Through paragraph 18 probably needs to be in your contract. Other important conditions, be careful. I sold timber one time at a 4-H camp. I put ribbon on dogwood trees. The road coming into our camp had dogwood trees, very picturesque underneath those pines. When I sold that timber, I had ribbon all over the dogwood trees, and I had a paragraph in my contract that said, if you damage my dogwood trees as specified with ribbon, they'll be $300 a piece out of your performance bond. Now, the old boy who was running the crew, he looked at his skidder drivers and he said, that'll be coming out of y'all's check. Okay, so last time I was down there, those dogwoods were still there. And I marked way more than they could possibly move. So before the sale was consummated, I let them have a couple of those dogwoods. But I'm going to tell you, if you load that contract up with stuff like that, you can't knock the bark off. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. I'm kind of looking at you going, do you really want to sell this timber? The other thing I would encourage you to do is put this contract together before you invite me to come look at your wood. Does that make sense? Because my bid is going to be contingent on how easy it is for me to operate. If you've got this thing torqued down such that I'm just having to tiptoe around out there and my people can't work like they're used to, you know. Now I do encourage performance bonds. I've had to use them before because, you know, performance bond, everybody understand what that might be? Is when you buy timber from me, I like for you to put down a certain percentage of what that timber's worth, and then I'm going to put it in an escrow account, and when the job's done, I'll give that all back to you. That is not extra proceeds. But if you tear up my roads, or if you do something and you don't come back and make it good, I've got a little money till I can hire somebody to fix it. I had some fellas tear up a gate one time and they just laughed when I asked them to come fix it, and I confiscated the bond. Built me, got me a new gate. Okay, so I'm just saying, and if somebody don't want to put up with the bond, you can ask them why necessarily. Now, I have had timber buyers that had a contract that the landowner refused to sign. So, I mean, it goes both ways. Practice number 5, please look at this. Inspect your logging job. You can have a contract that ain't worth the paper it's written on if you don't go out there and enforce it. You should probably check that job once or twice a week, if not every day. Just let them know I'm watching. If you see something wrong, go talk to them about it. You can amend this contract. So it's just business. It's just business.